Okay, it is 2:30 now, so for everyone already logged in, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We will get started in just a minute. We're going to give just a minute for additional folks to be able to access the webinar. Okay. All right, we'll let folks keep coming in. I'm going to start with just a minute of housekeeping. I'm Kelly Jones, Director of Learning and Program Content for NAED. I want to welcome Mark Roberts and Ed Wallace. Thank you both so much for being here, and I will introduce you both in just a second. Typically, the very first question we get asked is this session being recorded? And it is being recorded. The recording will be available within a couple of days on NAED's website. So you'll be able to go back and watch it. If you had someone you work with who wasn't able to attend today, then they can also go back and watch that recording as well. Those will be posted and available for everybody. Today's session will be interactive, so we are going to use two of the buttons that are at the bottom of your screen in Zoom. So as we go through, Ed and Mark are going to ask you some questions for you to respond to. We're going to ask that you respond in chat. And then at the end of the session, we are going to open up for Q&A. That's when you're going to ask questions of Mark and Ed, and we're going to ask you to use the Q&A button for that. So as we get started, when they start polling you or asking you for answers to their questions, we're going to start in chat. And then when we get to the end for Q&A, we're going to move over to the Q&A button. Okay, with that said, let me introduce our speakers, because both of them are giving so generously of their time. And Mark was with us last week for a webinar, so thank you for coming back. And Ed, thank you for joining him. Mark is the president of OTB Sales. He has over 35 years of experience. He is a sales coach, consultant, and trainer, and the author of Branding Backwards. Ed Wallace is a sales consultant and author of several books, including The Relationship Engine, and the two of them team up to do sales training and coaching and consulting, and we are thrilled to have you both here today. So I'm going to hand things over to you now.
Thank you, Kelly. Mark, I think you were going to kick us off.
Yeah, welcome. And for those of you that might not have had the time to attend our last webinar on virtual selling, you can visit the NAED website and watch it and download it. We had quite a few people attend and received many good feedback. So today what we're talking about is we've covered virtual selling, but let's go a little bit deeper into how do we build relationships? How do we create what Ed refers to in his book as respected advisor relationships? And given the current constraints that a lot of us are facing, what better time for us to double down and build those strategic relationships at our accounts? So with that, let's turn it over to Ed.
Thanks, Mark. And it's great to be with everyone. Kelly, I appreciate you having me here today. I know you had Mark here last week. Mark and I will be going back and forth. Everyone on, we thrive on your chats. So we're going to be prompting you a lot, but we also thrive on your questions. So feel free. You won't throw us off. We'll recover. We'll get back on track. I don't know if anybody saw this data. This came from McKinsey back in April, kind of right in the middle, right, of all this crazy stuff. And I'm sure you're thinking about it or you wouldn't be on this webinar today. But what's interesting about this is buyers are getting used to virtual salespeople. And I'm a front of the room guy. This is kind of scary for me. But buyer behavior is not even subtly shifting, it is shifting. So I'd like you to think today about, hey, how do I, if I'm in sales, or if I'm a sales leader, or if I own a business that's got a bunch of salespeople, how do I create hybrid salespeople? How do I help them thrive and align with the way buyers are behaving today? Our first chat do you believe, yes or no, okay? Do you believe, yes or no, that because of COVID and because of the need to be virtual, that your relationship playing field has been leveled somewhat? Yes or no, is the relationship playing field leveled? Frank and Katie and Lit, wow. I don't, one no so far. He must be the one relational expert. Everyone's saying yes. Wow. Fantastic. Scott said no. Okay. I would say, Mark, 18 out of 20, 30, 36 out of 40 are yeses. And again, if we could, and everyone has a different situation, a different reality. Everyone has different relationships, right? The fact of the matter is, I'd like you to think about the next hour as if the playing field has been leveled. And all that relational capital you built over the years, because you were able to shake hands, you were able to be in the conference room, you were on the golf course, wherever you were taking that person physically away from your competitor. Your competitor now can access that person a lot easier. And I'm not disagreeing with anyone that said that said no. But if you looked at the chats, almost everyone is thinking yes. So let's all think about it that way today. And I appreciate everybody chatting in right off the bat. I mentioned earlier, I'm a front of the room guy. I'm a workshop guy. I'm a keynote guy. I travel all over the place. And so it's been withdrawal for me the last 3 months. I actually have some in-person stuff scheduled in July, but I'm also doing virtual keynotes now. And I've had to shift. So I guess, and we've shifted all of our programs to virtual, even though we still are ready to do in person when that happens again. And I'm asking you to think about shifting today. I'm asking you to think about, how do I shift? How do I pivot? Shifter was easier than trying to find a seesaw or something for pivot, so I used a gear shift. So I like to think about shifting today. Real compact agenda, but a lot of great content in here. Successful virtual relationships still follow the core relational capital concepts that I've been talking about for years, that you already know. And by the way, you know all this stuff about relationships. Kelly didn't invite Mark and I on here today to say, you all got to get good at relationships. No, Kelly has us on here today because she understands, because she runs learning and development, that adult learning is about helping adults see what they already know through a different lens in ways they won't forget. So I'm going to tell you a story. I think you're going to like Max. And I'm going to talk about his principle of worthy intent and how that manifests. And Mark is going to join me on some of these points and how they become virtual. Every one of these 5 points can be applied virtually. We are helping companies apply them virtually. You can apply them virtually. We just want you to think about them today. And then Mark's going to talk about, if you're a sales leader or a company owner, do you understand where the gaps are? What are my team's gaps? How can I help them become these hybrid or agile? We can come up with a lot of different terms. Pivotal. I love basketball. I love the term positionless player. I don't think positionless sales professional really kind of works, but we're actually asking you to get your teams to think about being positionless. They have to pivot virtually or proximate. I'll use proximate for when people are in person. Mark's going to talk about some ways to improve virtual skills, and then we have some free offers for you at the end, as most webinars do. Chat lines are open. People buy from people they want. I can't wait to see these, Mark. This is going to spin like a slot machine.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of people are saying trust.
Yeah, trust is dominant. Oh, there's a no. Respect. David threw in respect. Lots of likes too. Like and trust. I couldn't see who it was. I think it was Michelle was hedging her bet. Have a comfort zone developed. Good one. Are friends with Francisco. Good job. Knowledgeable. See, we're getting deeper and deeper now, right? Okay, I'm going to stop the chat. I'm gonna ask you to respond to one of the top 4 answers now. So hold on. If you had to pick one of these 4 now, which one would you pick? Now that we got you all warmed up, just put a number in. 1, 2, 3, or 4.
A lot of 3s and 4s.
Yep. Rob's got like. So much fun to watch these. So we do while the responses are still coming in, we do a lot of research into business relationships. We don't just talk about them subjectively. We try to come up with objective information. Mark's going to share some of that in a minute. Scott just chatted in for Jeff 3.5. Attaboy, Jeff. Good job. The number one answer for the reason people buy from each other, from the research we've done, is when that customer knows that you understand what they're trying to accomplish and that you're aligning your approach, your solution, whatever it is you're selling to them, right? Your services, the parts, whatever that is, that align with their goals. So people buy from people they like, know, trust, respect. Top 4 or 5 of all times. But ultimately, when you dig deeper, people buy because they know that that person, and now that person's virtual, clearly understands what they're trying to accomplish. So I really appreciate everybody chatting in there. Hope everybody's feeling warmed up. We're gonna continue to talk about common goals and like, know, and trust, and know, work before all those answers y'all gave as we go through this. I want to bring Mark into this a little bit though. So Mark, do you think any of what I just shared about, we all subjectively know what goes into a great business relationship. Does it change virtually?
I don't think it does. As you indicated, a couple slides ago, we're just reminding people of things they already know. But one of the biggest challenges as I work with teams is what I would refer to as limiting beliefs. This is where we get into the mindset of the salespeople. I've been speaking with a lot of teams, and I hear salespeople saying things like, I can't sell virtually. I can't create virtual relationships. But what's interesting is when they did a poll of CEOs and senior executives, they said 89% said relationships have a highly significant impact on their business results. And best relationships only work at about 45% of their potential. So there's a huge untapped potential for us if we focus on building strategic relationships. And what better time to do that than now?
And you know what, Mark, I just want to interject here. If everyone thinks about this survey was done in relation to proximate relationships. I got to think, and again, there's not enough data right now, that it's all still coming in, that number is lower right now. So I guess I'm going to interrupt you, Mark. I know you have another piece of data to share, but this is such a great group from a chatting standpoint. Why is that? Why are we not getting even 50% out of the potential of our great relationships? I love to see some answers come across. This is going to make everybody think a little bit. Why is it? Why do we have this? Why do we have this? They're really important, but we're not getting even 50%. That's a good one, Stan. We failed to ask. Too busy. Yeah, we're too busy to build relationships, yet they're the secret to success. Mike says, Mickey, I think it says, we get too comfortable. We're afraid to ask for more. We don't listen. Marlo, great job. I wish I could read everyone's off, but I know everyone can see all these. We don't do enough planning. You're right on point there, Andrew. Failed to ask for more, spreading the wealth, right? They don't want to give us all their business, but we should get more than 50%. We don't spend the amount of time and effort with the right decision makers. Good job, Ben. We don't do planning. Okay, fantastic. Time, planning. I just shared a stat, or Mark just shared a stat, that they're really important, yet we don't spend enough time on these really important things because we're busy with a lot of activities. Mark's going to share some data with you here and how much time we actually spend selling, which is kind of shocking. Here's one more for you, Mark, and then I'll let you keep going. I'm sorry.
So we said that 89% of senior executives believe that building relationship is critical to future success, but only 24% have a formal process to build relationships. So that's why Kelly invited Ed and I here today. Today, we're going to unpack a strategy on how you can build and strategically build relationships.
Right. We're going to talk today about not only how to build relationships, proximate, virtual, it all still applies subjectively. We're going to talk about a process today as well, because believe it or not, you go through a process when you build a relationship. We just wrote it down for you. Mark, I have a few more points here from you. Sorry.
Yeah, so the other question is, what do we know so far about virtual relationships in sales? Well, the average salesperson spends about 32 to 34% of their time selling, which is very discouraging if you're an owner or a sales manager. And what's interesting is 15% of their time has been traveling. So for the salespeople forced by the constraints of COVID to work remotely, they're getting a pickup in productivity. 60% of salespeople report that virtual sales is increasing, and that was back in 2015 through Salesforce.com. And working from home, what we're finding, and it's fascinating, is salespeople are 13% more productive and 29% happier than working on site.
I know one of the salespeople who works with me is much happier not having to commute in the office every day. He has a long commute, and his productivity is so much better when he's working out of his home office, going to his calls from there. And again, I know in a lot of cases that's most sales professionals are remote, but limiting the amount of time they have to report in the office seems to be a positive thing to think about.
And Jack sent in a quick comment that, look, while I'm traveling, I can be productive. And I agree. When I'm traveling, I also connect with customers, but it's just an interesting shift that we're seeing occur. One CFO I spoke with recently said, look, my sales are down, I think it was 14%, but my selling expense is down 50%. So it's just making us rethink how to best serve our customers.
And I don't think, Mark, I mean, I'll have to get out of this business if I can't visit with customers, right? I won't be able to take that. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're doing this webinar today because new skills or the realization of skills we had in the past would have to be refocused and re-energized. Let me see if I can move this another page. So Mark, what mindset and skills do salespeople need? Why don't we get folks to chat in on this one? What mindset and skills do you think folks need? Let's see what comes across. What do y'all think?
Understanding your customer. That's very important.
Yep. EQ. David says EQ. Good one, David. Be flexible. Yep. Flexible is the key word. Katie says patience and understanding. Passion. I like it, Tom. Kathleen. Positivity.
Listening skills.
Yep.
Market knowledge.
I think the one about technology, I missed who said it because it's moving so quickly here, Mark, but relearning how to use technology. We better have a decent background on our Zoom, but I think it's okay to be authentic. And if the dog's barking, the dog's barking. It's okay. Show them the dog. Most people get a kick out of that. Strong signal at home. Good job. Yeah, basic stuff like a strong signal at home. I'm on a hard wire right now because I don't trust the Wi-Fi in our office. Think about those things. Mark has a nice checklist here to share with everybody. If I can find it, there it is.
So we want to have a relationship building versus just a sales mindset. Be focused on building that relationship for the long term and creating lifetime customers. Understanding the way your buyers buy. One of the services that I offer is actually going out and interviewing your customers and asking them that question: how has things changed? And how must we adapt based on the way you're buying today? So that's absolutely critical.
I think it's a great question to ask a customer, Mark, to say to them, especially a customer, maybe one that they're not a great customer, they're a pretty good customer. And it's probably a great way to start the conversation. Hey, we've done some business together. How are things changing there? And then ultimately, once you get your answers, how do I align with that? What would you suggest?
That's a great point. Active listening. If you haven't heard this term before, I highly recommend you Google it. Most people listen to reply and not listen to learn. And what buyers have complained about for as long as I've been in sales is two things. One, the salesperson didn't listen. And second, the salesperson didn't understand the business of my business. So active listening is something we can all improve, and particularly on the phone.
And one of the things that I like to add on to that, Mark, is I think buyers appreciate business people who just happen to be salespeople. I always like to say, hey, be a business person masquerading as a salesperson. And I know everyone has different titles. I'm just using salesperson generically. I know some of you are account managers and senior account managers and VPs of this and that, right? But ultimately, you know, I think people like to do business with business people.
Empathy. Almost every webinar we're in now, this comes up. And it's about asking about the people first and then the business. There's been a lot of shifts. A lot of people are working from home. They're finding working from home is a little bit more difficult sometimes. So again, we got to lead with empathy more than ever before. Understanding the components of relational capital. We're going to discuss what those are here in a little bit. Locating the relational GPS for each customer. And we're going to have Ed unpack what this concept of GPS is all about. And then displaying worthy intent. Ed's going to share a great story with you. But I think we've all had that experience, right? When somebody calls us and it's all about them. It's about them hitting their number. It's about them hitting their goal for the month. As I've said in the last webinar, I mean, they usually call it like dinner time. And it's very obvious. One author calls it commission breath. You know, they're calling and all they're about is themselves. Worthy intent you can feel within seconds. And that's about actually taking an interest in your customer and serving them. If they're facing new challenges, how can you help them? And lead with warm versus competent. And Ed's going to unpack that concept of what really resonates with our human brains and how warmth is a real critical component when we work with people, particularly on the phone. And then virtual presentation skills. I've been attending a lot of Zooms just like everybody else, and I'm sure we all have horror stories of how they've gone wrong. So make sure you understand how to use the technology. And in the last presentation, we even gave you some pointers on how to prepare.
Gee, Mark, are you saying in the next 40 minutes, I got to cover all of that?
Pretty much.
All right. Well, I'm going to try, and I'm going to start with a story. This is a story I've told many times. It generally resonates with sales professionals. I'll take you back to when I first started in sales in the early 90s. That's the 1990s. I'm a CPA by education. I know that's hard for Mark to fathom. And I'm in recovery. I've been in recovery from that whenever I got into sales back in the early 90s. And when my first sales job, I was given a sales territory, and I live in the Philadelphia area, and I had a territory in the Midwest. I know Kelly's in Missouri, so I had Missouri and Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, the usual suspect Midwestern states. Love visiting there. And that meant I had to get to my territory because I was not a virtual sales professional. I wouldn't even call myself a sales professional at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, but I had to get to customers. So I set up a schedule where I leave my house on a Tuesday morning at 5 a.m., take a taxi to the airport, spend Tuesday, Wednesday, come back Thursday afternoon, pretty much rinse and repeat every week. And the reason I would leave at 5 a.m. it was because my wife, Laurie, and our first son, Brett, who was, they had just started sleeping through the night. And Mark is a brand new granddaughter. Congratulations, Mark. And I'm sure that his daughter and son-in-law are all, trying to work through that. So I didn't want to interrupt that process. So I would take a taxi at 5 a.m. And at the time, I'm taking a company called the Bennett Taxi Cab Service. Now, the Bennett Taxi Cab Service had big white American-built taxis, maybe like a Grand Marquis or a Crown Victoria. I'm sure the Gen Xers and the boomers know what I'm talking about. The millennials and the Zs don't have any idea what I'm talking about, but just picture a big white cab and picture the Bennett logo on the door in green, the Bennett Taxi Service. So I'm taking up this big white taxi every Tuesday morning. Well, typical Tuesday morning. I'm packing my bag. It's almost 5 a.m. I'm trying to be quiet. I get distracted and the driver rings the doorbell. I run to the door, and we had a very small townhouse at that time, so it was like 2 strides. I give him the high sign. He just took my bag, acknowledges, start wheeling it towards the taxi. I pause, look up at the ceiling. Laurie's asleep, Brett's asleep. We're off to a great start. Gently close the door behind me. Now remember, I'm taking these big white taxis every week. This guy shows up in a London taxi, very similar to this one. Now the steering wheel was on the US side, but it was very similar. Well, that kind of got my attention. And as I'm approaching the taxi, the guy's holding the door open for me. Most drivers come up, try to disrupt the baby, or would sit in the car and blow the horn, try to disrupt the baby. He was actually holding the door open for me. And as he closed the door and came around to get in, I noticed several things that were pretty distinctive, besides the fact it was a London taxi driving around the Philadelphia suburbs. The cab was really clean. Ever ride a New York City cab? Hey, I like Katie. She just chatted and go Birds, go Eagles. We're aligned, Katie. The cab was really clean. New York City cabs, right? You never know what's going to happen. You know, you feel like you have to reshower, and don't touch the door pockets in any big city cab. And in the 1990s, there was no hand sanitizer. So, but this cab was spotless. No dispatcher, no music playing, no sports station. And on the seat next to me had a little plastic bottle of water. Pretty cool, right? I have my little water prop here, okay? This guy thought of everything. Maybe he was the original Uber. Maybe he was before his time. He gets in, he turns and extends his hand, and he says, "Good morning, Ed. My name is Max. How you doing today?" I'm reaching for his hand, and I'm thinking, how did he get my name? And that's a very close depiction of the real Max. For the next 30 minutes on the way to the airport, Max learns an awful lot about me. He learns about my accounting recovery period and my goals and aspirations in sales. He learns I'm failing at sales, thinking about going back to the dark side. Sorry about my accounting friends on here, if anybody's on, back into accounting. He learns about our infant son, Brett, how important it is for mom and baby not to be disturbed when the driver comes to the house in the morning. And what he was really great at was asking the next question in a very credible way. So here's where the first ride went. So Ed, what do you do? I'm in sales. What do you sell? Software. Where do you do that in the Midwest? Kind of typical questions that a casually interested driver might ask. And most of the time, the conversation, in my case, would not go any further. Here's his next question. Tell me what you think about this. And I'm going to let the chat line open on this. Well, Ed, do you have a sales territory, or do you sell to named accounts? Are you more of an account manager? What do you think I'm thinking when a cab driver asks me that question? Let's see if we get any chats coming in here. Do you have a territory, Ed, or do you sell to named accounts? Are you more of an account manager? Right, Chris, he might have been in sales. He could be very informed. David said, great question. Great question, Michelle. Aligned with the guy in the car, right, with the customer. Who is this guy? Well, you're going to hear more about that, Pete. Can I hire this guy? Great stuff. I said, I have a territory, Max. Well, tell me about your quota. My quota? I've got one. Well, how is it constructed? What do you mean by constructed? Well, how much of your business comes from existing customers and how much comes from new friends? Are you more of a hunter or a farmer? Now, I know a lot of you have been in sales for a long time. Hunting and farming was not mainstream terminology in 1990. I said, well, I'm supposed to be a hunter, Max, but the fact of the matter is I'm not really doing very well finding new customers, and I haven't figured out the customer equation yet. And he interrupted. He said, Ed, I bet you those existing customers are more profitable for your business. And on and on and on, I'm sharing more and more with this taxi driver who seems an awful lot about life, business, and sales. We get to the Philly airport in a flash. I'm on the curb. I give him a great tip. I go, Max, that was awesome. See you next Tuesday at 5 a.m. And the little smile you see on his face turned to a frown. He said, I'm really sorry I can't take you next week. Just like that. I go, What do you mean you can't take me next week? In my mind, I'm thinking, I just gave you a great tip, buddy. He said, I have a lot of fairs. I have a lot of friends. And it takes a few weeks to work a new friend into the rotation. Max, it's 5 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, as Katie knows, in Philly. When everybody's at the Jersey Shore, you can't take me next Tuesday. I have a lot of friends. And hold on, Max, when are you available? Is he selling or am I buying? That's a question. Is he selling or am I buying? I'm buying, right? Right, Chris? Right, Michelle? How do we create an experience? If you leave this webinar with one thing today, how do you create a competitor-proof experience for your customers where they're buying and you're not selling? Because we love to buy stuff, we don't like to be sold stuff. If you can leave with that one thought, how do I competitor-proof myself? Anyway, he pulled out a calendar, he picked out a Thursday, the Thursday before Labor Day weekend. My usual schedule was Tuesday, Thursday. He picked Thursday, which meant I had to come back on the Friday of Labor Day week. When he offered it, I said, I'll take it. Because there's something going on here, right? Besides it being a London taxi. By the way, I got a little toy cab here with me today. I forgot to show you this a minute ago. I got my little toy. He wrote it down. He went his way, I went mine. Fast forward 3 weeks. Baby's asleep. Mommy's asleep. When Max came to the door, what do you think he did not do? And we don't have to answer this. I know I want to move us through the story. He just gently tapped on the screen door. He listened and remembered, right? He just gently tapped. He listened and remembered, but when Mark talks about active listening, it's a demonstration that you care about the answers. He listened, remembered, and cared about. How many people were in that cab in those 3 weeks? I'm an obscure sales guy. He remembered the one most important thing. And Chris is making some great points on the chat here. Don't wake up the guy's baby. Okay, so now we're in the cab. I'm going to do the interview this time, right? Max, I waited 3 weeks for a ride to the airport, a commodity. Who rides in the cab? Why did I have to wait? Who are these people? And Max was actually from Ohio, so he had kind of a lot of humility about him. And I said, come on, tell me. He goes, okay, a lot of little executives ride around with me. I pick their colleagues up when they come into town. Who else, Max? Salespeople like you, Ed, going back and forth to the airport. Who else? He goes, well, when families go on vacation, kids love to ride with Uncle Max. Sometimes they're afraid to get on an airplane, and Uncle Max tries to make them feel like a little less nervous. And I become so busy that I started a tour business for senior citizens in the nursing homes. And somebody chatted this in earlier, like, who is this guy that stumbled into my life, right? I said, Max, what's the secret to success? I'm sure you've got a business card for young sales guys like me with the theory on there. Give me that card. What's the secret? He held his fingers this far apart. He said, it's the little things that turn fairs into friends. And I could still see him squinting in the rearview mirror, the little extras. So I said, okay, Max, I need to know. Is it the beautiful taxi cab? Is it the pleasant conversations, the knowledge of sales? Is it the way you ask questions? Is the listening, remembering, and caring about the answers? And I listed several more, and he said yes. Anybody have any idea what he meant by yes? I wanted a specific answer. Max said yes. What do you mean by yes? I gave him a list of things. He said yes to the list. It's all of those things. Everybody's saying, Marissa, all of them, because we don't know what is in our customer's relational GPS. If you think about Max's experience, he left no stone unturned. And I think if Max was in a virtual business, it would have been the same way. So we're going to talk here over the next half hour about how do you not leave any stone unturned? And how do you focus on all the little things, because all those little things add up to success. So I'm going to park Max, see Max. We'll refer to Max a few more times today. It all starts with Max's concept of worthy intent. And I'm not on here today to suggest that you don't have your customer's best interest at heart. You would not be successful if you did not. These are greens fees, my friends. These are table stakes. These are whatever you want to, this is your ante, whatever you want to call that. It's not worthy intent, it's displaying worthy intent. Are you seeing behaviors from your customers that are validating your good intentions? Do your Zoom meetings run over and the customer's comfortable with that? Do your customers share confidences with you? Do they share what the competitor quoted? Unless you're seeing those behaviors, they don't necessarily get that you've got their best interest, and maybe instinctively you do, but maybe intentionally you really don't. Maybe you don't know enough about their business to have good intentions. So it all starts with Max's foundational principle of displaying worthy intent. And if you think about it, I referred Max, I booked Max every week in advance. I gave Max a bigger tip than a typical cab driver. Those are all things that told Max I got his good intentions. So I like you to start thinking about, are you seeing behaviors that validate good intentions? And are you building relational capital? So we're kind of working anecdotally from Max through the concepts now, through the principle and now the concepts. 3 qualities build relational capital. The first quality is credibility. I'm going to send a virtual t-shirt. Actually, I'm going to send a real t-shirt if you'll give me your mailing address. A Got Relationships t-shirt to the first person who correctly defines credibility in the chat box. A definition, don't be Googling it. You've got to do this from the heart and the gut. What is credibility? Close, Doug. It's not GPS. We're going to get to that. But I am looking. Do you say that's integrity? So far you're all talking about integrity. What is credibility? This is the most important quality when you're launching a relationship in any way. Everybody's talking about integrity. Responsibility is integrity. Somebody's got to win this t-shirt. Quality of being trusted, integrity. Gilbert, history of integrity. Come on, Chris. That's game. There it is. Kathleen, you win the t-shirt. So get your address to Kelly and we'll get you a t-shirt. But Kathleen said, I hope Kelly picked up on that, believability. We can stop the contest now. The definition of credibility is the power to elicit belief. The power to elicit belief. We've got to be believable before people can start engaging to trust us. Think about that. It's so simple, but we sometimes bypass credibility. Max was great at asking questions. You can build your best credibility by asking great questions about that person, their business, their function, whatever that is. It starts with credibility. It's one way. Then it becomes two-way when we start doing stuff together. That's where trust comes in, where everybody chatted in, do what you say you're going to do. And then just being our genuine self, just being our authentic self. And we can talk about authenticity forever. We don't have enough time on that today. And these 3 qualities create what we call relational capital. In every business relationship you have this ability to become believable. Like when a person first meets you in any way, virtually, in person, a lot of times they're assessing us emotionally. What's it going to look like to have Mark running around my plant or my facility? Well, Mark asked some really good questions. He's not going to embarrass me. In fact, Mark's going to make me look good. Then once they start asking us to do things, we can trust each other. And they've got to do some stuff for us too along the way. And then it's just, be yourself, everybody else is taken. My favorite comment about authenticity, just be yourself because everybody else is taken. How does relational capital now work when we locate GPS, which Mark teed up earlier? Well, everybody knows GPS systems are the roadmap to travel success. We've gone from paper to Magellans to our phones. We wouldn't leave home without them. Hopefully, we're going to be doing some traveling again soon. Well, just like GPS systems are the roadmap to travel success, understanding your customers' business and personal goals, their causes, their passions, things they care deeply about, and or their struggles. The more of that we understand, the more relational capital we build. We all know relationships are the key to success, especially in those tight, decision processes for customers. Well, I'm going to go with Mark. I've worked with him before. He's come through for me before. I like his products and services, but I'm really buying Mark. In a lot of cases, and I'm not sure if the people who own your businesses recognize this or if you recognize this, but you are the brand. You are ABC Electrical Distribution. Okay, I'm just making that up, right? You are that brand. And a lot of you said people buy from people they like and trust. So I don't know how many hundreds of people we have on here today, but everyone on here is a living and breathing value proposition for your business. A living and breathing value proposition. And the more GPS you locate, and almost anything a customer, a vendor, an outside person, an internal person shares with you, if you're running a team, a sales team, anything they share with you can be categorized as a goal, passion, or struggle. Max was great at asking questions. Max asked different questions to executives than he asked to salespeople, and he got a GPS, although GPS systems were not very prevalent in the early 1990s. Here's an example. So when you're on the phone, you're doing a Zoom, and you're taking notes down, or you're typing, whatever you're doing, just vertically put GPS down a column on the page, and you'll see it's magical how everything can fall in one of these categories. It gives you information to go research. It gives you information to go back on. I like to call it a shorthand for business relationships. It doesn't replace the customer profile and all that stuff. But a lot of things in the customer profile outside of name, address, and telephone number can be categorized this way. The number one thing we find when a customer really believes in you and really wants to work with you is when they share struggles. When the customer shares struggles, that's when maybe Mark can help me here. Mark's asked a lot of great questions. Pain points, Marlo, exactly. So when you hear struggles, don't run from struggles. Struggles are a good thing. Customers are accustomed to sharing goals with us. I don't give a lot of points for goals. It's great to learn your customers' goals and what they're trying to accomplish, and I talked about that earlier because that's what the customer perceives. But when they share struggles, they're looking at you as an advisor. I want to go through a couple more, and then I'm going to turn it back to Mark, and I'm going to take a breath. I would challenge, if you lead a sales team or if you run a company, I would sit down with each of my sales reps and ask them, can you identify an element of your customer's GPS that you learned in the last 10 days? Or make it easier. Can you identify your top 5 customers' GPS? I guarantee you, we've trained 27,000 and counting salespeople. They cannot do it. They cannot do it for all of their top 5 customers. So a little takeaway exercise for everybody.
Hey, Ed?
Yes, Mark, go ahead.
Couldn't we also say the same thing for sales managers who might be managing salespeople virtually for the first time in their careers?
Yep.
I mean, if there's a business owner on this call, it might be an interesting question to ask their sales managers. What do you know about your employees? What is their GPS? Because really, we need to build that relationship of trust internally as well as externally. Would you agree?
Yeah, the weakest relationships are generally internal. We take them for granted. And again, if a sales leader has a team of 10 or 15 people, he or she should maybe sit down and just see if they can actually identify the GPS for each person. It cannot hurt, because even if you don't know it, it gives you something to go after the next time you engage with that rep. I'm really glad you brought that up, Mark. Thanks,
Ed.
Appreciate that. And hey, all of this comes into a process, and I'm going to turn this back to Mark. You go through a process. We just wrote down your process for you. We put it into a ladder. We call it the Relational Ladder because you want to advance. You don't want to skip steps. You can fall on a ladder. So a ladder is a great tool for showing where relationships reside. You notice how the ladder tapers, because as you go from an acquaintance dimension, when you're first meeting someone and asking questions and building credibility, you want to get off of that rung as fast as you can, but it's the widest rung because it could take some time, right? It could take some time just to get engaged with that person. Notice the professional peer dimension covers 3 rungs of the ladder. if you could get, if you had 100% of your relationships and you had 15% new ones coming in, assuming you're established and you're not new in your role, if you could get 80% of your relationships into the peer dimension, where the customer or the sales team member, if you're a sales leader, or the sales leader, if you're the business owner, right? If you're working as peers with them, just two business people working on stuff. So I'll use the sales scenario. There is no hierarchy between buyer and seller. They're a business person with needs. You're a business person with solutions. You're working as peers. You're collaborating to find solutions. So you notice peer goes through three rungs of the ladder, using time effectively. For every 60-minute meeting that a buyer is in, they find value in 6 minutes. Mark shared that stat with me a while back. Think about that. For every hour you spend with a customer, if you're not creating a competitor-proof cab ride, they're getting 6 minutes of value. Now, I know if you think about it and you plan it a little bit more and you're ready with those great targeted questions for them, you're going to deliver a lot more value to them, and you may not need 60 minutes. Try 45-minute and 30-minute meetings. I think buyers like that better. And by the way, the top rungs of the ladder are respected advisor, 5 to 10% of your relationships here, career spanning relationships. These relationships go with you from company to company. They take you from company to company with them. Max was my respected advisor. I wasn't a respected advisor to Max. We were peers. So I would round that. That gives you an idea of the intensity of respected advisor relationship. All of these, we're gonna offer everybody a free copy, a PDF copy of my book, Business Relationships That Last. All of these build to what we call a business relationship that lasts. And as you go up this ladder, you build these assets, these deposits we call relational capital gains. And they take you from virtual, virtual transactional relationships to longer term relationships. There's nothing different in these 5 points virtually than they would be in proximate. It's just we've got to exercise our virtual muscles a little bit more. I'm gonna take a breath. I'm sure some questions have come in, and we'll cover those. I'm going to turn it back to you, Mark, to talk about virtuality, as I like to call it, and some of the skills we need and how we find the skill gaps. So I'll turn it back to you now, Mark.
Thanks. Curious, this is where you can participate. What % of sales managers that they polled believe they have the talent on their team today to meet their future goals? What do you think that number was? I see 85, 18, 65, 65, 40, 10, 20, 60. Interesting, nobody said 100, 15, less than 20. That's interesting, 25%. So I guess the general consensus is we all believe we need to adapt and pivot, as Ed mentioned earlier. So let's go to the next slide. It was 16%. CSO Insights polled sales leaders, and about 16% of them believed that they had people on their team ready to go and that would help them achieve their future goals. So it's a tremendous opportunity for all of us to develop our people, and that's the point. So the first step is we got to identify the skills gaps. You can use an assessment tool. You can observe. There's many technologies now where you can actually listen to phone calls, listening for the right value proposition, measuring what % of the time your salesperson talks versus the customer. But what's the process to build virtual relationship skills? Do you have virtual relationship building skills to begin with? We need to look at and assess the skills of your sales team. Do they have the sales skills to work remotely? This is a shocking number we shared in the last webinar, but only about 41% of salespeople can work effectively remotely without any training or coaching. The next question to ask is, how do your buyers want and need to be served today? Again, we can accomplish this with voice of the customer research, win-loss research, all of which that I help people with. But let's put them at the center. And what a great time to become customer-centric. Then we need to design modern training to grow sales and close those gaps strategically. And then don't forget the sales managers. We often see people focus on improving their sales team skills, but they fail to work on the managers. And who better than the coach, the person that's there to help the salesperson throughout every day. So some of the attributes of virtual relationship building include social selling. Kelly and I are actually talking about possibly offering this group a social selling course if you're interested. Be warm, professional, casual business dress.
Somebody mentioned that, Mark, in one of the chats earlier, that even though we're working from our homes, we still should, dress for success.
Well, and it actually gets you in the right mindset. In the last one, we discussed how you should have a list of what you plan to do the next day, the night before, and have a professional workspace and go to as if you're going to work. Authentic conversations. Again, how many times have we all received that call where it sounds like somebody's reading a script or they're, pitching way too early? Have human to human conversations. That's what people are really valuing. Practice your facilitation skills.
And Mark, I know this is something you teach, but not to minimize the skills you bring, but you can go out to YouTube and find facilitation skills training for free. So, there's really no excuse for something like that. You can get that on your own instead of, there aren't a lot of sports on right now. There's not a lot of, live television. So, spend an hour one night on a YouTube on facilitation skills. Sorry, Mark, I had to put that in there.
And then engage, asking questions to learn and understand, not asking them, to reply. And we really need to pick up our pace. We've got about another 10 minutes or so, Ed.
Okay, I'll move.
And then have dynamic visuals. Don't make your slides too busy. The slide, you're the presentation. Keep that in mind. The slides are there just to support you.
All righty, there's the last one.
And then build your competence with tools like Zoom, Google, GoToMeeting, etc. Whatever the tool is that you're asked to use, practice it. Maybe invite your kids, invite your parents, have a couple Zoom meetings, but be prepared.
I was so glad this was Zoom. That's my favorite.
That's my favorite as well.
Yeah, when I have to get on Teams or GoToMeeting, like the older model, it's not any fun. So, Mark, do we want to do Q&A or do we want to talk about this first? What do you suggest?
Why don't you talk about this and then we'll do Q&A.
Okay. So it's hard to get people hard copies of books these days, and there's several hundred of you on here, so it cost me a fortune to give you the book for free. So we're going to offer the ebook version of Business Relationships That Last. You see John White at the bottom there. Just text John, give him your name, okay, so he knows who it is. And we'll get you a PDF of Business Relationships That Last. I can't sign it, but you will find out where Max is today if you get that book. I have a partnership with an organization called Sparks IQ, and we've done some pretty cool videos on relational capital. They offer the first course complimentary. Click that link. You can get that course for free. It's about 15, 20 minutes, and it's Hollywood quality video and actors. It's really funny. Really impactful. And also, again, contact John White on number 3 if you'd like to learn about what we call VAM training. The new term that we're using is virtual account manager. I know everybody's got different titles, but everything's moving to virtual. So we've got some special opportunities there as well. So hit up John White if you'd like to learn more about any of this stuff. I think we're going to Q&A, Marcus. There's our bios. That's the best way for Q&A. I'll put me up if I'm answering. I'll put you up if you're answering. And Kelly, do we have any questions, or have we solved all the world's virtual relationship problems in 50 minutes? We might have solved them, Mark. I don't know.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Zoom decided to not let me come off mute.
Oh.
Yeah, we did have a question. So one person said some of their sales team members are struggling to do some of these relationship building techniques with prospects that they don't know. So ideas are welcome. Do you have any strategies like that when you're starting cold with someone that you don't know?
Well, I would argue with technology today, it's really not something you should ever do is go into something cold. In the social selling course, for example, we talk about how to leverage social skills. You know, Google someone, look them up on LinkedIn, understand what industry they're in, have talking points for that industry, understand how people make money in that industry, and have some really good open-ended questions that show your competence early and often throughout the conversation. But again, I know it's very difficult, particularly virtually, to reach out to people you don't know. But I highly recommend check out their profiles, check out LinkedIn, Google their name, Google their company, and in the company, look for their press room. And what you'll often find is articles, maybe their recent annual report, and just be prepared.
Okay. We had the question, what is the best way to virtually gauge competitor advances and retreats?
Mark, do you want to do that or should I do that?
Go ahead.
I was going to put you up. Okay. I think, again, it depends on the behavior of the customer. Again, in this situational question, right? So if the customer's not corresponding with us as they normally would, I think that's an indication that, well, there's something going on there. If the customer, so again, observe their behavior. Are they responding? And they normally do, then there's something going on there. Then we've got to find a way in to have a dialogue with that person. And again, I think the telephone, or should I say the iPhone, is the best way. I'm finding people are getting buyers are getting less phone calls, and they're getting inundated with digital. So I would try outreach through a telephone. There was another question that kind of aligns with that as well that came through the chat. What about a customer that's indifferent? You know, I don't know if that person's indifferent and they're just thinking about price, then they're not seeing the value. And an authentic discussion about that, once you can engage with them, I think you have to be as authentic as possible. Say, I'm getting the vibes here that, there isn't a value exchange, and it's really funny. We have this intern and he does these inside sales calls for us. And he had a terrible call the other day. And it was with a lady, and she said, she just killed him on the call. And he asked her at the end, can I ask you one more question? She said, yes. He goes, what could I have done better? She went on for 20 minutes, and now she's a prospect. So I think asking kind of a vulnerable, authentic question might help as well.
It also starts with calling on what we refer to as your ideal customer profile. Make sure that if you're reaching out to somebody that's new, they're in an industry, they're in a space that has already proven, where you can have a value exchange. One of the quickest ways to improve your sales and improve your close rates is calling on the right people.
There are so many great questions, Mark, coming through the chat as well. So, I know we're running, I looked at our time, I know we're running out of time. Mark and my LinkedIn and Mark's LinkedIn are on here. If you would like to just copy and paste those questions or however into LinkedIn and connect with us, we'll try to answer those for you. I think that might be the best way to expedite it. We have so many great questions just in the chat box, Kelly, that we can't respond to right now. So link in with us, and Mark and I, one of us will respond. Pick one of us. He's the better looking guy. I'm the older guy. No, just kidding. But pick one of us and link in with us, and we'll try to answer your questions. And again, if you want to copy the book or participate in any of those other offers we have, hit up John White or hit one of us up, and we'll respond. Mark has a great assessment as well that he can talk with you all about.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, we do have more questions than we have time. But thank you both for being here today. Thank you everyone for participating. We hope that this has been very helpful. Do follow up with Mark and Ed on LinkedIn. They are both very responsive. So that would just be great to continue the conversation. So we've got some thank yous coming in. We've got some excitement about the book. So that's great.
Great. Kelly, our pleasure. Hey, relational leaders always put the relationship first. And I think if you're putting the relationship first and not feeling like you're selling, I think you can break some walls down. It just might take a little time, but we all know they're the key. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for inviting us to participate today.
Thank you both so much. We really appreciate it. Take care and good luck. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.